Great. Welcome everyone to this CISR seminar. We are the fourth in the semester and the third in this month of October. And today we have the great pleasure of having Sean Marquardt is going to be the speaker for today. And this will be very exciting for very many of you who would like to know how to maneuver or how to go past in your career path in cybersecurity. Sean is a cybersecurity architect for the Office of Washington State Auditor, comes with a very long experience, 18 years of experience working in cybersecurity and related areas. Sean holds a Master of Cybersecurity and Leadership from the other university, from the University of Washington, and also holds the industry standard Certified Information System Security Professional, and been working with the Washington State Auditor's Office for the past 8 years, I believe, and works with things that would make residents safer and things that would be needed when they are audited. Today we'll be talking about his journey in IT and cybersecurity. And so without further ado, I would let Sean begin his presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean, and I'll be your speaker today about my journey through the field of IT and cybersecurity. First, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Asfa and James for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. It's my understanding that we have students from Washington State University, Montana State University, University of Idaho, and Central Washington University. Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending. Let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. Thank you for the introduction, Asifa. As he said, I've got over 18 years of experience in the field of IT, several years of that being in cybersecurity. Regarding my education, I have graduated out of the University of Washington, Tacoma with the Master's of Cybersecurity and Leadership. And I do have the CISSP, the Certified Information System Security Professional Certification from IC², which is considered the gold standard of cybersecurity certifications in the field. So if you'd go to the next slide, please. So let's start off, I'm going to date myself here by going way back to the 1990s and 2000s era. And this is kind of like the birth of the internet. And in this time, I was still a high school student working towards my ambitions of becoming a system administrator. And I took my first classes in networking and information technology in kind of that time frame. And I took my first ever certification in Windows NT Server 4.0, which I failed 2 times. So this not being dissuaded by my failures, I continued to study and got accepted to a technical college out of Phoenix, Arizona, where I got my associate's degree. Now, ultimately, those credits were not worth anything because it was a technical college and the accreditation was poor, but I did get a lot of real good hands-on experience in the field, and I attained several industry standard certifications during that track. You'll see that I'm certified as a CompTIA A+, Network Plus, Linux Plus, the Cisco CCNA, the Novell Network 5.1, and finally a Microsoft Certified Professional in Windows 2000 Server. And so after I was done getting my associate's degree, I had a real hard time getting a job in the IT space, like a lot of students will encounter as they are coming out of their baccalaureate programs. So ultimately, I decided in 2005, I would go forth and get the experience I needed in the IT space by joining and enlisting in the United States Army. And I did that for 8 years. And the first thing that they did after they shipped me off to boot camp in Fort Benning, Georgia, and then I went to signal school in Fort Gordon. I was the domain administrator for all Army Okinawa and also did IT security. So my first role was as the domain admin in all Army Okinawa was that of, managing users, managing security groups, managing group policy objects, managing patches as they relate to operating systems, and managing software as it gets distributed across an enterprise. Then I was a kernel's driver for a couple months before ultimately being moved into the IT security department, where that was my first exposure to IT security was with the Army. And I was doing a vulnerability management program. So what vulnerability management is, as if you heard of CVSS and CVE, as you would take a scanner like Retina or Qualys or Tenable.io. Back then it was called Terrastat, but it's the same functionality. And we would scan our network and we would determine based off of what computers have what vulnerabilities. And it was my responsibility to do the scans and to do the remediation of those scans. And ultimately, at the end of our accreditation process, we were awarded the most secure network in the Pacific. So that was a big body of work right there. After my tenure of Okinawa, I shipped off to Fort Hood, Texas, and got promoted to Sergeant E5. And I was the network operations manager doing a bunch of classified stuff. And basically my role was digital video broadcast over satellite. So basically real-time television over a satellite connection, if you can imagine that scenario. After my deployment, I came home to Fort Lewis here in Washington, where I was assigned to the 47th Combat Support Hospital. If you've ever seen the TV show MASH, we had the tents in the whole 9 yards. It was a 150 bed field support hospital, where I was initially put into a security role and got a bunch of computers imaged and ready and certified to be on the network, ready to be assigned to the people who were coming back from Iraq. Everything was ready. Then I got deployed in 2011 again back to Iraq as part of the Hospital Information Systems Administrator, where we were responsible for all the soldiers' health information records as it retained to transport and storage back to the States. So that way those soldiers could get the medical records and the care that they needed. During this time that I was assigned to Fort Lewis, I obtained the CompTIA Security Plus, which is required as part of the DoD standard. And I became the Senior Information Security Manager there for the 47th Combat Support Hospital, with broad authority to approve or terminate network connections as needed. And mainly my role was there to certify people's training and make sure that end users had the training that they needed, so that way they were less vulnerable to threats. So that kind of sums up my career in the United States Army. If you go to the next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So after I had my honorable discharge from the Army, I immediately got to work with a small consulting company out of Seattle, where they enrolled me in some courses to take the VMware Certified Professional Certification, which I obtained, which educated me in the realm of hypervisor and virtualization. And I also obtained a second certification with Microsoft for Dynamics 365. I did some consulting work for them with USCIS, the immigration people with the Department of Homeland Security, doing the Canadian Visa Project and the Watchlist Project. And the second contract I was on there was with the Washington State Fusion Center, there out of Seattle, where I was the sole IT person for the whole shop. And I was Exchange, I was Active Directory, I was help desk, I was fixing computers, I was database administration. I was making sure all of our SOC workstations were updated. I was networking, I was everything from A to Z, working for a bunch of three-letter agencies. You all know the FBI, the Seattle Police Department, the Seattle Fire Department, the Department of Homeland Security. A lot of those organizations that I was supporting there. After that contract was done, I went to contract for Microsoft. Many of you are familiar with Teams Online. This is our platform right now. Before that, it was called Skype for Business. And before that, it was called Link Online. And I was part of the Link Online live service operations supporting 125 million Link Online customers. So that really helped me scale up my skill set in terms of number of customers that I was supporting, and the size of the deployment that was of my impact. So after my contract was done with Microsoft, I joined the state of Washington in 2015. I was originally joined as an e-discovery and forensics administrator. So e-discovery, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's called electronic discovery of data. So we're talking about litigation. So when somebody sues your organization, there's what happens is called a discovery process. And this discovery process enacts what's called a legal hold on data or documents or emails or anything that's responsive to that particular inquiry, that particular request for information as it links to the case, as it were. So having that chain of custody, making sure that we have the appropriate custodian of that data identified, making sure that that data is not altered in between the discovery and the collection, and making sure the custodian is saved and making sure the chain of custody is followed was really the key to that that role. And of course, forensics was a side business to the discovery process. In case if things got deleted, we would have to go and restore or do some forensic analysis on the workstation to actually recover that responsive data as a result of litigation. So after about 6 months, I joined the Enterprise Active Directory team for DSHS, the Department of Social and Health Services. That's actually where I was when I joined the state of Washington in 2015, DSHS. And there was a one-man team, now there was two. And I really loved that role because it enabled me to expand my skills throughout the organization. I got to learn, I got to know a lot of people, a lot of really good people. I got to visit many of our field sites. One of the most prominent field sites that I remember is called Rainier School, and out of Buckley. And that's where disabled adults go to get an education, or disabled people go to get an education because they're unable for regular school. And I saw an individual there and I'm like, this is why we do what we do. And that's huge. That's key to a field of understanding in terms of like why your work matters in the field of information technology or cybersecurity. That understanding of why. So I thought that was a really impactful experience. And we'll kind of circle back around to that as we talk about cybersecurity as it relates to business. During my time as Enterprise AD admin, I was certified in ITIL Foundations, and ITIL being the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, which is kind of a series of best practices as it relates to IT and service management, help desk, service operations, things of that nature. And I was also certified as certified Scrum Master in terms of delivering potentially shippable product increment within a 2-week time period. After my tenure of Enterprise AD, I was there for about 5 years. I was still at DSHS. I moved to the Research and Data Analysis Division of DSHS as their Senior Information Security Engineer. And there I was responsible for architecting and designing Splunk, a SIM, which is the Security Information Event Management Solution, a SIM. So what that does is it takes your events from multiple aggregate sources and consolidates them into a single area. So that way you can search those events and you have that single pane of glass to actually look to see what was going on at a specific time. Excuse me. During this time, I was also taking my master's program, and part of my master's was taking the CISP exam. And so I passed my CISP exam and I was certified as a CISP by SC squared. So that was a big accomplishment there. And about February 2 years ago, so this coming February, I will have been 2 years in with the auditor's office. I became a principal cybersecurity architect. And that's kind of the role I was working myself towards way back in the days of enterprise AD. So I'm always working on myself, like, what am I doing next? What's my next role? And how can I get there from where I am? And they're certifying me in Microsoft Azure and cloud services as it pertains to cybersecurity. And my current goal is to get the CCSP, the Certified Cloud Security Professional exam offered by SC Squared. So continuous education, that's a huge part of why I like cybersecurity. And I did use my GI Bill to go to school. In 2021, I graduated from the UW Tacoma Bachelor's of Science in Information Technology. I was also admitted to the Master's of Cybersecurity Leadership immediately after, which I graduated in June 2022 with that degree. That's hanging up on my wall, which you can see. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So you might be asking me, all right, Sean, you've talked a lot about what your path was. As an undergraduate, how do I make sense of this? What do I do? What can I pursue as my path forward? And I've kind of identified 3 major swim lanes or field paths, so to say, within the field of IT. We're not talking about project management. That's more on the side of business. We're talking just about in the field of IT, where can I go? And there's 3 major components. Software development, this is for your computer science majors. Operations, this is for your people who work, people who graduate out of bachelor's degree programs like in information technology. And cybersecurity, which kind of encompasses both of these things if you are honest and you check the domains of the CISSP. So we'll first go into development for you bachelors of computer science out there. And we'll talk about entry-level software development. Perfect opportunity for somebody coming straight out of college. You can find entry-level positions as a software developer most everywhere. And these are developing line of business applications. So we need this application made. We need a time tracking application made. We need a scheduling application. We need a leave tracking application made. We need some HR application made. These are line of business applications that are being made in terms of software development. Now we talk about full stack developer, and this is talking about external users are interacting with your application. So a user will come on to your website, order 10 widgets, and that would be your front end, and that would also be your back end placing that order so that way it can go in to be fulfilled by your manufacturing line. That's talking about front end, which is typically a website, and the back end, which is typically a database. So integrating these 2 components as one. That's what we're talking about when we talk about full stack developer. The Node.js, the React, the database, the entity framework, ORM, these things are talking about full stack development. Another area that you might have success in is called SDET, the Software Development Engineer and Test. This is exactly how somebody I know that's very near to me got started in the field of IT as an entry-level software development engineer and test. So what this is, somebody else has written the software. Your job is to break it. Your job is to write test automation and validate everything is in accordance with the business rules. And if something that you find something that's not or something that misbehaves, you file a bug with the developer stuff, and they go and they fix a bug, and then you rerun your test to make sure that it is fixed the way they said it would be fixed, and that things are working according to expect. This is another excellent way into the IT field as an entry level coming straight out of college. And then we have machine learning, which is, of course, a very new and very modern type of concept, but many companies are going forth towards the machine learning at a very rapid pace. And then we'll kind of go into this area that bridges the gap between development and operations called DevOps. You'll see this block here in the middle called DevOps. But the reason I have this in the middle is because it's not only a software developer, it's also somebody who's familiar with operations. Operations is about keeping the lights on, making sure that all the traffic is moving from point A to point B, that everything is, staying available as long as it can, so that way your customer can order their widgets. DevOps takes that potentially shippable product increment and brings it into operation. So they bridge that gap between the people who are keeping the lights on and the people who are writing the software. You'll hear terms called CI/CD, which is continuous integration and continuous development. This type of methodology will actually build, this pipeline will actually build your software and push it into test, push it into QA, push it into production, these different environments that are there. So that way you can stage your deployment as it goes from being developed to being tested to being QA. This is your final check to now we're in production and this thing is live to all of our customers who are ordering their widgets. Now we'll get into cybersecurity, which is my bread and butter. And for entry level, oh, I completely missed operations. Sorry about that. So we'll talk about operations, which I did for a really long time, probably 13 years I did operations, and I absolutely loved it. I love turning the wrench. I love putting my hands on the keyboard and fixing problems. So this is where you'll find that skill set. And we'll talk about something that everyone dreads when you talk about operations and entry levels at IT, the help desk. Yes, you're going to be answering phone calls. You're going to be handling customers who are not exactly happy that their computer is not working the way they want it to be working. But I can tell you no less than 5 people who have started off as help desk, entry-level help desk people. One of them is now a system administrator working on Citrix. One of them is now a DBA. One of them now is a manager who manages the entire team that goes forth and fixes the computer when you report something is wrong. Another one is a sysadmin, and I know another one that's a DBA. So what's a help desk? An opportunity, a way into an organization. I don't discount the help desk just because it's below you. It's entry level. That's your way into the organization. That's the way that you can sit down and prove yourself and learn on the job. And when you have time that's available, because there's always downtime, you go to LinkedIn Learning, you go to Pluralsight, and you pick yourself up a new skill. And part of IT in general is always learning a new thing. That's why I love this field. So then we'll get into networking, which is your CCNA. And we're talking about, okay, we're making widgets here, but well, nothing happens on the network without the network. Nothing happens between one computer to another without the network. You don't have communication from HR to marketing. You don't have communication from engineering to architecture or anything like that. So the network is the backbone of everything IT. We're talking about the LAN, the local area network, and the WAN, the wide area network that goes to the internet and beyond. Now we'll talk about sysadmin, and this is what I was for many, many years, and I absolutely loved it. And this is once the help desk has logged the problem, they'll usually kick it to the system admin. If it's a service that's being supported, like Enterprise Active Directory, like Exchange, like SharePoint, like a database, and the sysadmin will go in and fix the problem. So that's part of why I really liked being a sysadmin. Then we have your DBA, which is responsible for all the databases in the organization, from your sales, your orders, your marketing, your engineering database, everything that's database related, relational database or non-relation. The DBA takes care of that bucket of work. And before we get into cloud, I know you see it there, we'll talk about cybersecurity. And entry-level cybersecurity, you want to look for a job called SOC analyst. The SOC analyst requires an analytical mind that thinks fast. Because when you have an incident, you need to determine if it's really an incident and how bad it is very quickly. And to accomplish that goal, you're typically querying something like the SIM. And so you'll query your SIM and you'll determine what is going on with a particular device or user at a given time. And you'll need to reconstruct, based on events, exactly what happened during a very specific timeline. This user clicked this link, this is what happened, this is the network connections that were done, this is what was downloaded, this is what executed, all these things that occurred during this timeline. And so the SOC analyst is really our first line of defense in terms of reactionary cybersecurity protocols as determining what happened. And the SOC analyst is the person that does that. Then we'll talk about the cybersecurity engineer. This is the person that kind of keeps the lights on. We need to make sure the SIM is running. We need to go ingest these logs from this location. Let's program our SIM to point to this location, make sure everything is loading in correctly, and then load it in. Then kind of we'll talk about policy, process, and kind of compliance in the same bucket, because it really kind of muddles up here. When we talk about compliance, we're talking about IRS 1075, HIPAA, CJIS, which is the Criminal Justice Information System. We'll talk about different regulatory bodies from federal to state. And all of these different regulations have requirements that a company has to follow, especially HIPAA, which the one I'm most familiar with. It says, to protect your client's confidential data, you must do these things, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like one of those says, you must encrypt all your data at rest. Do you do this, yes or no? And for this, you have a policy which describes, this is what we're doing. This policy that's in writing, this says what we're doing. The process and the policy also says, this is why we're doing it. Note that the policy does not address how we are doing what we said what we're going to do. That's the process. The process says, this is how we are going to encrypt everything at rest. We're going to apply BitLocker. We're going to apply something like Veracrypt. We're going to buy all encrypted self-encrypting drives, something like that. Or we're going to have a storage array that is just the volume is software encrypted by default. And that kind of ties into that compliance piece that I just talked about. And finally, we'll have penetration testing, which is part of cybersecurity, and that is actually testing a piece of software for vulnerabilities and seeing if that can be exploited, and if it can, what are the ramifications and what is the risk? Because cybersecurity is really about being a risk management function of the business. Last but not least, we'll talk about the cloud, and this is all the hotness these days, the cloud. Everything is going to the cloud. And this is all encompassing from development to operations to cybersecurity. Development, they want to push their applications to the cloud. Let's go serverless, let's go functions, let's go software as a service. Let's take everything off of our traditional path and have these things be automated in the DevOps pipeline. Operations, well, that's the same thing we just talked about, the platform as a service, make sure everything is up and running, make sure we got it configured correctly. And then the security portion will be like, are you sure? Let's audit. Let's check to make sure these things are the way they are supposed to be. And if they're not, let's make corrective action plans to update those settings. So we'll go to, I've been spending kind of a long time on this, so let's go to the next slide, please. So here's a great roadmap from our friends at CompTIA, and it is quite biased in their favor because, well, they made it. And this is a IT certification roadmap for people who are interested in cybersecurity. You can kind of see how the the roles on the right tie into the 3 lanes that I previously talked about: your operations, your development, and your cybersecurity. Information security, well, that's cybersecurity. Network and cloud is operations. IT service management, that's operations. Data development, that's development. And last but not least, you have training. So you kind of go off here on the right, see the beginner and novice, and we'll talk about the A plus. So the project plus is great for understanding project management and understanding like what's in scope, what's out of scope, and doing Gantt charts and things of that nature. The Network Plus is a really great certification in terms of understanding networking in general, which I think is a great benefit for students that are coming out of programs to understand like how data is being transferred from point A to point B. The Server Plus, and then we have the Security Plus over here, also in the intermediate area, as long as you're CCNA. I don't have any of these advanced certifications that I'm looking at, but I do have the expert level in the CISP, and I should actually go back and probably pick up the CISM and possibly also the CISA. The I'm looking at the Certified Information Systems Auditor. Yes, the auditor, which will help me understand more of the regulatory body and the governance that we were previously talking about. So if we will go to the next slide, please, we'll talk about what is cybersecurity, just as an introduction for the uninitiated. And it's the art of protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use, and the practice of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. So there's a big difference between cybersecurity and operations. And you know, the office of the CIO and mainly the office of the CEO, they're concerned with, I need to make sure that my widget production line is up 24/7. I want to make sure my customers can order widgets, you know, at any hour of the day. But you know, I'll allow 30 minutes or an hour of downtime from here just for the maintenance purposes. That's availability. As cybersecurity professionals, we're not only concerned about the availability, we're also concerned about the integrity of data. Is it the right stuff? The confidentiality of data, is it only shared to the people who you want to be shared? So is your magic set 11 secret herbs and spices only available to those people who need to know? And so that's why we have a big job in the terms of cybersecurity. So we'll get to the next slide, please. There's a few definitions of in cybersecurity you should know. One of them is a threat, and another is a vulnerability. And a threat is really any potential danger that's associated with exploitation of a vulnerability. And a vulnerability is the weakness in the system that allows the threat source to compromise the security, such as software, hardware, procedure, human weakness that can be exploited. There's many different types of vulnerabilities out there that you can list in the wild. Next slide, please. So we'll talk about some of those threats, and we'll, many of you have seen the icon here in the top red portion of the slide, WannaCry. That's a big example of ransomware. We also have different types of threats such as viruses, worms, remote access Trojan, social engineering, data exfiltration, and last but not least, phishing, which we'll cover about here in a few slides. So next, please. So you might be asking me, well, Sean, why do I want to get into the cybersecurity field? It looks so complex. It's inexorably tied to software development, operations, and application security. It's a risk management and reduction function to the business. It pays pretty well to start, to be honest, $80,000 to $90,000, and there's absolutely no job shortage. There's a couple common application misconfigurations software development should be aware of, and buffer overflow, mixed configurations, plain text, and ejections, and you'll find more information on the OWASP top 10 or the CWE top 25 just Google those two. Go to the next slide, please. So for the business majors out there, you might be asking me, well, Sean, I'm John Doe, the CEO of Widget Manufacturers and Company. Why do I care about cybersecurity? I'm manufacturing widgets. I'm the best widget manufacturer in the world. If my widgets if I stop manufacturing widgets for 1 second, I lose $10 million. Let's talk about risk. What reason do you have as a CEO or as a student of the business to leverage cybersecurity? You have 27.6 billion of those reasons. In 2022 alone, $10.3 billion of total loss was met by businesses in the United States for cybersecurity related threats. It's a big number. So is it important to the business to have a cybersecurity program? Oh, yeah. So the source of this data is the 2022 FBI Internet Crime Report. As you can see here, the top 5 crimes in 2022, phishing #1, as it's been for the last 5 years. Why? It works. You wonder why you get all those junk mails in your inbox from Prince in Nigeria? Because people click it. 300,000 victims in 2022, from invoices to spoofed emails to compromised accounts, everything. So there's a lot of risk in terms of cybersecurity. And when we talk about the office of the CISO, as it relates to the business and the office of the CIO, and answering that question, what do we provide to the business? Because the business sees us as an operating expense. We're not producing widgets. We protect the business from this threat, so that way you can continue producing widgets and not have a stop of production. Next slide, please. So last but not least, I'd like to talk about a few projects before we talk about potential jobs here. And I did a HIPAA risk analysis for the Research and Data Analysis Division of RDA. Over 9 systems to satisfy our statutory requirement regarding storage, processing, and reporting of client data. So that was according to a risk analysis questionnaire, and I also assessed recommended and log corrective action plans for future implementation. I've done a number of SIM projects, as I've alluded to, implementing and architecting and ingesting logs from various sources into a SIM solution. I've done security design reviews, which is basically looking at a third party such as Zendesk, Microsoft Data Gateway, and Arctic Wolf. So I look at a third party vendor, assess their security. It comes from a cloud solution, and say, can we ingest and use this product in our environment? And what risk does that entail? And lastly, I'm working on a secure desktop configuration. And the reason why I'm so focused on the desktop is the desktop presents what I believe to be our biggest attack surface. I have hundreds of thousands of employees, all with their own computer that's sitting there on their desktop. All of them are receiving junk emailed by the hundreds every single day. It takes 1 click. That's literally how quick it is these days. The servers, yes, of course, that's where our crown jewels are. This is where our data is being stored and processed. But if a user with the right access clicks on that link and the account is compromised, the server's compromised. The keys to the kingdom are held. That's why I'm focused on making it as secure as possible. Next slide, please. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about a little shameless plug here. I love working for the state of Washington. It's probably the best career move I've made so far. And nowhere else will I have a steady work week. I don't get called in for overtime. Incredible work-life balance. It's really the best move I've ever made. You go to careers.wa.gov. In the filter, you'll see a job filter for the type of job you want. Click the one that says IT and computers and sort that from lowest to highest salary. The salaries that are the lowest, that's the entry-level positions. And you can see one posted right here on the screen. IT customer support entry, tier 1 hiring pool 2022. And this date is kind of old from when I compiled the slides, but I guarantee you there's another entry-level position open right now. Go apply for it. Also look for positions listed as in training. The words in training, that's going to be an opportunity for on-the-job training. They'll hire you at an entry level and train you to become the second level up, having a on-the-job training plan. Also look for an internship. If your degree program offers an internship as part of your degree requirements, take it. There was one individual that had an internship with T-Mobile out of Bellevue. He got hired on immediately after his bachelor's, got a 6-digit job working in their IT field. Not a joke. It's really a great way that you can find a career in the field. And I recently had an intern at the auditor's office. I would have offered him a position if I had the headcount, but he's now working for another state agency. So he's still with the state to this day. So great, it could be a really great opportunity for you to be an intern. So next slide, please. I won't go over these jokes since we are kind of running out of time here. So take a look at these. One joke here is the 2 Wi-Fi engineers and the reception was fantastic. Go to the next slide, please. Here's my contact information. Feel free to link in on me, linkedin.com/in/ishmarcourt. My email's there on the screen, as well as my telephone number. So we are running out of time, if I'm correct, Asafat. So this will be coming up for questions.
Yes, that is very true, Sean. You did a wonderful, wonderful job giving a tour of not just your own career, but the career landscape in IT. And I'm sure the students would find it very useful. You've got something to say for these computer science majors and other engineering or IT type majors, and then even for business ones. So we really appreciate that. I'm going to let students ask questions, or anybody who has got questions. You could unmute yourself and ask, or you could put your question in the chat, and I will be monitoring that, and I will ask Sean while he's around. Any questions from anybody?
Sure, I'll start off.
No, go ahead, James.
Yeah, Sean, you mentioned that when you were in the Army, you were handling satellite communication security at one point. I was curious, what were some of the threats you had to watch out for?
Unfortunately, since I was in the military, I can't really talk about that time too much yet. So
Okay.
You have to understand, I'll have to use the classified information flag here.
All right.
Well, students be asked, think of a question, Sean. So I want to maybe connect this one with what's going to happen next week. CISR students are going to be attending a virtual career fair. And I want to say to every student to go ahead and register for it. You find the information on the CISR website. James has been sending an email, but this is a very nice kind of preparation for that, in addition to knowing about backgrounds of themselves and having good resumes to put, there is a little bit of an introduction to this will be DoD space, but still very many of the things you said were relevant. So in that sense, this was a nice connection. And next week there is no CISR seminar, so I would encourage students to attend that career fair.
Right, and my particular office, the auditor's office, we I don't think we have any IT positions open right now, but if you go back to the previous slide there, James. No, one more. There you go. Go to so the link there that automatically sorts the IT positions from ascending to descending, and I guarantee you there's positions there that are available within the state of Washington. So we mainly look for people with accounting backgrounds who actually perform our audit. I know we 100% have auditing positions open right now. But in other agencies within the state, there are openings for entry-level positions within the field of IT. There's probably over 150 to 200 different positions open within the field of IT right now with the state of Washington. We need people, and it's really a great place to work. Looks like we do have one question here in the chat. You had from Justin. Hello, you have your CCNA and you're considering going for your CCNP. Would you consider it worth? I guess that my answer is that it depends. I have my CCNA and I never really pursued anything beyond it because networking was not really something I wanted to do. If you want to go into networking, there's a standard certification from Cisco, the CCIE. That's their top level certification, the CCIE. And I've heard rumors that if you are a CCIE, people are like lining up to put you on their payroll so they can use your CCIE number. That's how big of a certification that is. And so if you want to get into networking, absolutely go the Cisco route. It's 100%. But if you don't, then, you know, pursue, find something else to pursue. There was a question coming from the not the gray hat group, but the Sizer group. So if you go forward a couple of slides there, please. Bernard asks, is 150 positions opening fairly common year after year? I would say it's fairly common on the regular. Absolutely, yes. Let me actually go to the careers site here. While I'm doing that, I will answer. Oh, I can't log into it right now. Sorry about that. But yes, 150 to 200 positions open right now. And I don't even have to look. I know we need people. And many of those are not entry level, but I would say in the terms of entry level positions, we have quite a number of them that are open.
Sean,
right,
which slide were you looking for?
I think it's the next one, please. Yes, this was asked to me from the Sizer group on how to bypass an antivirus. And what I wanted to go into was understanding how an antivirus, what an antivirus is and how it works. An antivirus is another computer program, as everything else is. And how it works is it's primarily signature based. So it's got this big dictionary, if you will, of this is a virus, this is a virus, this is a virus. And if your file happens to match one of these hashes, then that's the detection primarily. And there's also a heuristic base, which is it looks for commands within the code executable that might indicate a malicious intent of that code without that, and it doesn't have a signature in this big database. Other than that, for educational purposes only, write a 0-day. A 0-day is essentially something that is not in the big detection list that I just told you about and is undiscovered by researchers. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks for answering that question, Sean. So maybe let me just add one more thing. So I got introduced to Sean through Zach Worley, who is the president of the cybersecurity student club here. And when Sean was saying the Sizer group, he meant that group and a larger portion of it. And so he had been interacting with those students through discourse, I believe. And so that I want to thank you for that too. Just wanted to make that connection and thank Zach for first introducing me to Sean. We've got a minute or two left, so we have got time for a question. Those of you who are Sizer students, you probably have already seen it. There is a link to a seminar survey, as we always do. Make sure to take the time to fill that out. That will be helpful for our program. And we still have a minute or two, I think, to ask questions. I don't know if there was anything in the chat that came our way.
So following up on that 150 positions, I just looked and I did see 100 open positions. And there's I do see a IT customer support desk entry open with the Department of Health, another IT customer support entry with the Department of Commerce. Another IT coordinator entry open with Department of Natural Resources. So the positions are out there on the streets right now. IT customer support journey with WSP. So these are all great positions to be applying for. Here's the system administrator entry for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So just looking at the career site here, there's a number of open positions that you can look for.
All right. Thanks again, Sean. We are running out of time. Would like to stop here because people would have other commitments to go to. Thank you so much. This will be recorded and is recorded and will be posted on the CISR website, and so will the slides. Students would be, I would encourage you to attend the career fair, register for it first. You'll find it on the CISR website. And there is 1 day left for applying for the summer internships also. October 31st is their deadline. We will see you in 2 weeks' time on another CISR seminar. And till then, goodbye, and thanks again, Sean.
Thank you for having me, Asfa. Thank you, James. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.